Hi, my name's Kevin Comito, and I decided to talk about colonization and the displacement of the indigenous people of North America. So I started by talking about the history. Um, since the inception of the United States, the Native Americans have just been constantly mistreated and pushed farther and farther west. They've had their land and their culture stripped from them and been displaced onto reservations. And a lot of that was done through, everybody knows manifest destiny, but there was so many other things our government did to ensure that that happened. They signed a lot of really unfair treaties that were clearly unfair to the Native Americans. They passed a lot of acts. I have the Dawes Severalty Act named there, but there's also the Indian Appropriation Act, the Indian Removal Act. There's a bunch that were all, the main goal of them was to strip away the rights of Native Americans so they can take their land and displace them. And the colonizers at the time didn't care. There was no thought about what would happen to these people. It was, through manifest destiny, it was their God given right to expand and to take that land. We can see today still there's, a lot of long lasting effects. You can look at that map at the top again, and you can see in 1990, which isn't that long ago, the really small amount of land that's been left for the Native Americans. And all of that land it's not good land that typically you wouldn't want to live on. You can't farm on it. It's rough land, typically in poorer places. And so a lot of times on reservations, you'll see, extreme examples of poverty. There's a lack of opportunity and a lot of unemployment because of that. There's a lack of government intervention. And I think the saddest thing is there's the absence of Native American culture. All of their culture had been stripped away through generations of what the colonists considered, education. They tried to Americanize the Native Americans as they took their land. In terms of geography, again, you can look at that photo at the top, and you can see from 1850 they had the Native Americans. It had the entire western half of the United States, and they quickly lost a lot of it. Within 150 years, they were down to almost nothing. And so the reservation system was started, and some small of land was given back to them. A lot of places, California, Arizona, New Mexico, the Dakotas, Wyoming, are all places where you can find reservations. But again, it's typically in areas where the land isn't fertile and it's not extremely suitable for good living conditions, and that's unfortunately why that land was given to the Native Americans. We can still see as a result of these policies and actions, there's a lot of issues that are still being faced today on the reservations and within Native American communities. Uh, for example, because federal policies restricted their land ownership and economic opportunities, there's no easy way for them to make money. They really were left high and dry, and so that contributes to a lot of the poverty that you can see on the reservations. The same thing goes because of the lack of opportunity. Unemployment can exceed 50% in some areas on reservations, which is insane. There's really no opportunity if they want to stay on the reservation, which is the only area they have left with their family and any partial resemblance of their culture. Other issues that I find interesting are like the removal of their traditional diet and the introduction of alcohol has put them at an increased risk of alcoholism and diseases like diabetes and heart disease. The Native Americans spent generations eating specific diets, and now that isn't it wasn't easily accessible to them for a while because of the idea of Americanization. Their bodies are still essentially evolving to adapt to this new diet. And the same thing goes with alcohol. Native Americans lack the enzymes that are able to break down alcohol like Europeans have, and it really leads to them that they get drunk really fast and they get addicted to alcohol at a much higher rate because of it. I found the intersection with speech language pathology pretty interesting. I mean, it's very sad, but during this time of westward expansion by the colonists, there were a lot of what were named Indian boarding schools, and these were schools created in order to what was considered, to educate the Native Americans. But essentially, what was going on here was that the white people were stripping away their culture and their language, and they weren't allowed to speak their native tongue. And there's plenty of examples of people being, abused or assaulted in school for speaking their native tongue. They would physically harm children to show that this isn't, we speak English, not whatever your native tongue was. And so unfortunately, because of that, so many Native American languages are either just straight up extinct or in an endangered state. But unfortunately, there's not many people that are able to teach it. So these languages are slowly dying off, and unfortunately probably will not ever make a comeback.